Welcome to today's webcast. This call is being recorded. And now to begin the program, I'd like to introduce Chris Flack. Please go ahead.
Hey, thank you so much, and welcome everybody in our audience to today's webcast, Building a Highly Available HyperV Cluster Using Free Microsoft HyperV Server, sponsored by StarWind Software. I'm Chris Flack with Redmond Magazine, and I'm here to be your host for today's event, so thank you all for joining and taking time out of your busy day to do so. Just a few quick things before we get started with today's presentation and introduce our speaker. We will have a Q&A at the end of today's presentation. However, we do encourage you at any time during today's webcast to enter your question via the Ask a Question box appearing on the left-hand side of your console. And hopefully, if time permits, we'll get to everybody's questions and get out some answers. Also, today's webcast is being recorded and archived for future viewing and listening purposes, and we'll send you a link to the email you're registered with within 24 to 48 hours after today's presentation. For today's webcast, you're going to be joined by two really great presenters. Later on today, you're going to actually see a demo and hear from Max Kolomaitsev. He is a StarWind Virtual SAN product manager with years of experience in the field. But Max is going to be here later to show us a little bit of a live demo of what StarWind has to offer and what they can do for you. But first off today, you're going to hear from Alex Karavanov, and he is from Five9. He is a virtual security engineer. Alex has a wealth of information on the technology industry. He's going to talk here today with Max a little bit about what StarWind has to offer, his experiences in the field. I'm sure you're all in for a really great treat today. But thank you all for joining, and I'd like to hand everything over to Alex so he can get started with the presentation. So why don't you take the floor?
Thank you. Thank you. And actually, our presentation is going to consist of a few parts today, and as you can see, here's the agenda that we've planned. So obviously, we're going to talk about cluster evolution at the very beginning. Then we'll speak about what does free HyperV offer out of the box, HyperV cluster setup and storage and management components, including the live demos. And of course, we'll run a brief Q&A and wrap up. Okay, so I believe the next step that we're going to cover is StarWind Software. And as we have Max on the line, I believe here's the best guy to speak about that. So Max, probably... Yeah, you can cover StarWind for us.
Definitely. Thanks, Alex. Hi, everyone. Right. So StarWind Software is a company spun off from mothership company called Rocket Division Software back in 2009. So we're privately held since, it was end of 2008, backed up by Beam and Elmas and A Ventures investors. Our primary product is StarWind Virtual SAN. And we're out of Boston, Massachusetts, more than 50 of us right now. And we are the global alliance partners with Microsoft, VMware, Citrix, Dell, IBM, HP, and Veeam. And Alex, tell us something more about Five9.
Thank you, Max. As a Five9 Software, we are a leading solution provider of management and security applications for Windows Server and Microsoft HyperV environments. And our products are really focused on the HyperV ecosystem. So we really try to deliver solutions exclusively for Microsoft HyperV and design them from the very ground. Thus, you see our products are built exclusively for HyperV ecosystem. We offer HyperV management for small and medium business. Powerful agentless and multi-tenant security for HyperV with our Five9 Cloud Security product line, and we also have a great solution that offers VMware to HyperV conversion for those users who are ready to switch to a new platform. We headquartered in Boston, Massachusetts, with offices in New Jersey and Europe. And overall, we have quite a few customers worldwide. So at this point, we have around 25,000 of clients. Okay, so as of the cluster evolution, Max, do you remember what it used to be to actually get a high available application in old physical days?
Oh, that was a nightmare. On old physical days when no virtualization was there, you'd had all different servers doing clustering for each different application. Each of that servers required shared storage, so you had provisioned different LANs for all those servers. You had a complex management of the storage ecosystem, and moreover, some applications just wouldn't cluster. They were not yet there to be cluster aware. They were not yet there to be shared storage aware, and only then these technologies started to emerging. So right now, with virtualization enabled architecture, we see great improvement. Our budgets are now dramatically simplified, so we still spend a lot of money, but we still spend a lot of money and we get a lot of good stuff for that. We use much less servers, much less power, and our storage system is also simplified. So we still require shared storage, but right now, compare old days and these days, I would say it's two completely different ball games. And moreover, some hypervisors even come for free now. Even though they have a commercial version available, they even have a free offering. We couldn't dream about that in the old days. So it's a free vSphere, or especially the free HyperV, which we're going to discuss today.
Right. Yeah. So HyperV actually offers quite a bit. And so what does it offer from out of the box when you use HyperV?
So out of the box, it's a really powerful hypervisors. By default, you get the HyperV role installed on it. You can install the failover clustering feature on it and cluster multiple boxes to provide redundancy. And that's really neat for a free hypervisor. The possible downside is that it still requires shared storage of some sort, so you have to maintain at least 2 additional servers for true high availability. So these 2 additional servers will serve storage, or it will be another shared storage resource. And one more thing it lacks is a graphical user interface. So there is no way to manage it efficiently or configure it quickly, unless you know PowerShell.
Oh, that's actually what we do. That's right. That's right. And this is what we do in 5.9. So we are working on improving everyone's experience with Hyper-V, even if you use a core state of Hyper-V server. So if you're using free Microsoft Hyper-V server that runs with just PowerShell, we offer Finite Manager that allows you to bring that fantastic piece of GUI interface for your management tasks. And that works remotely or locally. And this is what we offer to make a Hyper-V management process much more efficient. I would assume that storage can be also done much more efficient, right, Max?
Indeed, indeed. So as you see on the upper right part of the picture, StarWind makes it possible to use just 2 servers to build a highly available cluster. Just use the local storage of these servers, mirror it, and then present it back to the system. But I will get into some details about that a little bit later. At the beginning, let's just have a brief overview of what we need to do to create the Hyper-V cluster. First step for us would be configuring and provisioning the shared storage. This is the most viable requirement for a highly available cluster. You can have Hyper-V replication with no shared storage, but if you're thinking about live migration or high availability in case of unplanned downtime for any of the boxes, you need shared storage.
Indeed, right. So cluster cannot survive without shared storage. And of course, the second step, right, so that's failover clustering feature, and really that's essential. Each future node of your Hyper-V cluster should have that failover clustering feature installed. Please keep in mind that's really essential, and each of the nodes has to possess that.
That is true. So a lot of people think that failover clustering is the core part, which is pre-installed. Yeah, it was pre-installed earlier, but right now there are additional features, roles, and components, all those bells and whistles you have to install to get the certain functionality of the operating system. So once we have the failover clustering installed, it goes pretty much straightforward. We install the multipathing feature on each Hyper-V host so they can talk to the shared storage correctly. We configure the external network switch for each Hyper-V host, so our virtual machines don't get into a room without any doors in it when they fail over from host to host. Then we just validate everything to make sure our IP addresses are set correctly, our shared storage is configured correctly. Well, basically we've done everything according to the books, and we create the actual cluster.
Absolutely right. So once we've done all of these steps, we got our cluster set up. And obviously, so as the very first step, as you can see, so we need to configure and provision the shared storage. Max, can you probably speak about the storage component in more details?
Yeah, definitely. So the picture on the right shows you the basic configuration of StarWind Virtual SAN and HyperV cluster in a hyper-converged environment. So as you can see, we take the local storage of each server, mirror it using standard Ethernet cards. So it can be 1 gig, 10 gig, 40 gig Ethernet, so no proprietary networking here. It can be direct connected, so no switching involved, especially if you need a 10 gig backbone or 40 gig backbone. You don't need to buy a switch for that. Then the mirrored resource is presented back to the system as a virtual disk, which the local nodes see as shared storage and can immediately use it as cluster shared volume for the virtual machines. Now, having no dedicated storage hardware gives us zero hardware footprint, essentially no additional hardware at all. You just use the servers you have, so your compute layer is your storage layer right now. This also results in dramatically reduced capital and operational expenditures. Like there is less stuff to manage, there is less stuff to buy. Of course, both are reduced. Then we have complete fault tolerance with just 2 servers. So there is no third server, there is no dedicated storage hardware. There are just 2 servers cross-connected with non-proprietary storage fabric having complete fault tolerance. That's the minimal setup for HA possible. Now, no specialized stuff required for management. Since we excluded the proprietary part from the config, we just need one network administrator to manage it, especially for SMBs, where network administrator also does other tasks in the company. This is really cool because you spend less time configuring and spend more time doing your primary job. Next, StarWind can run on free and core Microsoft operating system versions. Basically, we are operating system version agnostic. We recommend the 2012 R2 line as the most up-to-date, but you can use any edition you want. StarWind can be installed on the core version using standard wizard. So once you type in StarWind exe, you will see the standard wizard and install it as usual. And then we have a centralized console which can be launched from your laptop or from any other Windows machine on the network. And this intuitive GUI, which you'll see soon, will allow you the centralized management of your storage ecosystem. So let me switch to the screen sharing part and actually show you how we provision storage and how we handle storage in this environment. Okay, so the screen share is now launching. Give me a few seconds and we'll start our screen share. All right. So you should see the StarWind Management Console now. Right, Alex?
Yeah, looking good.
Okay, excellent. So this console runs on my laptop right now. I am connected to 2 HyperV servers in our lab. They have some storage pre-configured, and we have already created the cluster just to exclude that process and save you guys some time. There are a lot of articles on the web showing how to configure the cluster, but no articles on this particular one. So these 2 devices are our quorum and cluster shared volume for the cluster. They are already connected and initialized, and this is our cluster. This is a StarWind cluster. So this is not really a Hyper-V cluster. This is StarWind's cluster, which contains HA devices. We've got device 1 and 2. I've provisioned them in something like under 10 minutes, and then it took me another 15 to get them connected initialized and then have the cluster created. So that's a lot of time to demonstrate. So I will just show you how to add one more device to the cluster. So the initial cluster creation takes just a minute, so no issue with that. Once we need more storage for our cluster, or we want to create just some storage for our future cluster, we right-click on our StarWind cluster, create clustered storage. Let's say storage 3. Let's call it something different, like cluster disk. Say I want it to be 25 gigabytes. Going next, I want it to be thick provisioned. Okay, thick provisioned works just fine. Then I select the servers which will be used for the high availability device. Server 1 and server 2. Go next. That is actually all I have to do to provision highly available storage. So as soon as the system refreshes, we'll see new disk. Right now it is synchronizing. As soon as it is synchronized, we'll be able to connect that disk to our cluster. So we have a replication manager showing our synchronization process. We have the statuses and the IP addresses we use for synchronization and heartbeat. And if we look at the backend, this cluster disk is essentially a file on the local storage of one of the servers, like here. If we look at the second server, it's also just a file, but it gets presented as a virtual disk to the cluster. It is fully functional and it is highly available. Now we have a really small intermission here while this thing is synchronizing, and let's see if we have any polls in our webinar, or maybe we have some questions coming in regarding this particular part of the setup or about our webinar topic in general.
Yeah, so just a couple. We have one question here for you. This came in from somebody in the audience. With 3 HyperV servers, would you need to mirror storage in all 3 or just 2 of the servers?
So there are actually both ways we can do it. So we can mirror it between 3 servers, and we can also mirror it between 2 servers and then use the 3rd server just as a compute host. So it does not necessarily need to be storage enabled. Same applies to the, yeah, sorry.
Oh, go ahead. Sorry, Max.
Yeah, it also applies to the other servers in the cluster. I mean, it can be a 10-node cluster, but just 2 nodes are doing the mirroring. The idea of having all nodes accessing their local storage is because it increases the performance, while in a hyperconverged scenario, we don't access the storage through the network. We just go locally bypassing the entire TCP stack. So that's dramatically fast compared to any iSCSI or fiber channel SAN. It's essentially direct memory access.
Let's see here. Another question here. Can the disk subsystem be a file system or an enterprise storage management system? The slide you suggested you were using the local OS for mirroring the database.
So we're using the local OS. I'm not sure about the database in this particular one, so we're mirroring the data which comes into the storage, and usually it's virtual machines. If it is SQL, we're mirroring SQL. If it is Exchange, we're mirroring Exchange. And the disk subsystem, I assume that question is about either local storage or some sort of attached storage. So we can use both local hard drives, and we can also use SAS, iSCSI, or fiber channel attached storage to each node to mirror it and then treat it as a single shared storage resource. Okay, we're almost there with the synchronization. So
we had one more question if you wanted to answer it while you waited for the synchronization to complete. Because somebody had a
okay.
Did you want to go ahead and finish up, Max? Or finish your demo?
We have time for one more question. I'm good.
Okay, cool. So Thaddeus has a question for you, Max. He's saying, let's say I have a storage cluster set up with 50 gigabytes on each server. What if I then wanted to upgrade the storage to 100 gigabytes with new hard disks as a replacement? How would I go about doing this?
So my answer would be, if we're doing a complete replacement with 50 gigs and you have totally new storage in the system, what I would suggest is just replacing storage in one server. Your cluster will still be up and running since the storage is distributed, and one copy of the data is still available. Then you migrate, you add that 100 gigabyte to the cluster as well. You migrate the data you had on 50 gigabytes to the new drive, which is bigger and faster, obviously. And then you do the changes on the second server, reconfigure it for the 100 gigs, and say StarWind to mirror it with the new 100 gigs, and then connect it to the cluster. This procedure can be performed with zero downtime to the environment, and I think it's something like 40 to 50 minutes, including the quick RAID array initialization and all manual operations. Okay, so our storage is now synchronized, and we can press a simple link to connect that storage to our cluster nodes. Bang. I know a lot of people get confused when they need to configure iSCSI on a core operating system, so I also wanted to show a small trick. Let me stop the presentation for a second and transition to the second screen where I have the remote desktop connections. Okay. Now we should go live in 3, 2, 1, go.
You're good, man.
Okay. Okay. So we're in a core operating system, and a lot of people have articles about PowerShell administrating iSCSI initiator, but there is one faster way to do it. You just type in iSCSI CPL in a core OS, and you get your standard iSCSI initiator. All the bells and whistles you had in the GUI-enabled version, you also get in the free version. There's just some tiny things which are still available to us mere mortals, even in the free operating systems. So we have everything pre-configured from StarWind. So the moment I clicked that connect the target link, the software automatically connected our new devices. So here is my cluster disk on both servers connected to this node. The same happened on the other node of the cluster. So I will just close this one and go with disk part. In disk part, we'll do a quick initialization of these disks. Let me just show you a list. This disk, we have select disk 7. Now, it also provides us some help. So I would say on line disk 7, like I would in the GUI enabled, but the guy just says, okay, use some help. And you'll get some additional information for that. But There are a lot of good articles which help us to do stuff in the core operating system. So it's really neat, and I will just use one of them. I would just say online disk. Okay. Now we create a partition on it. Write protected. Okay. Then we have a command called attribute disk clear read only. Cleared successfully and create a partition. We succeeded. Okay. Now we select that partition and assign letter Z. Oops. Like this. Okay. Now we have it configured, and you see that it is actually an imitation of the core. I do all PowerShell, but in the backend I actually had the graphic user interface. But we're still trying to do it hardcore and command line only. If we were doing it on a full operating system, that would be much simpler. So we have our second server here, and the only thing we'll have to do is just go to Tools, Computer Management, connect to that specific computer, go to Disk Management, get our disk, okay, offline, online one more time, and our disk is here. Now, to speed up the process, I will go to the cluster manager from here and add the disk to the cluster. See, we could do the same thing from Windows 8, but still, since I have this cluster up and running, I'll just do it from this one. That is a matter of 3 additional commands of adding cluster disk here, and then get cluster shared volumes and add disk to cluster shared volumes commandlets in PowerShell. So once we add that guy to our cluster shared volumes, okay, let's refresh. Good. We can now use Five9 Manager, and we can actually see everything, the entire cluster and the cluster storage right now, so the new 25 gigabyte device in the Five9 Manager on this host machine. So that's basically it. We provisioned highly available storage. Right now we can start provisioning our virtual machines on that storage. So we go to the cluster, say a new virtual machine. By the way, Five9 Manager is really cool at managing free Hyper-V. So I tried it earlier, but we actually broke our Hyper-V cluster after that. We had to rebuild it with new Active Directory because our test lab is really being used hard, and Active Directory just said, okay guys, no, you're not doing this cluster anymore. But I got it up and running on a different set of clusters within, I would say, 2 or 3 minutes, and I was able to create new virtual machines and migrate stuff. But actually, I digress. There is Alex on the webinar who'll be really glad to tell you about Five9, about how it works and the real benefits of it. You just heard one happy potential customer of Five9, and you'll hear the Five9 employee telling about it.
Thank you, Max. Thank you. Indeed, so what we do with Five9, we really want our customers to be very, very happy And we actually do that by dramatically simplifying and saving money for all customers on HyperV management. And we just recently added the HyperV clusters management capabilities to our product, and that's what Max just demonstrated to you. So you could see a cluster and with its nodes and cluster shared volumes. You could check the size of that. So that's really great. And as you can see, there is no need to use complicated PowerShell commands anymore, even though that's hardcore and that's really cool. But when you're in real life, sometimes you just barely have time to study some necessary commands. So you can just use File Manager and do everything fast. So you get a convenient GUI that you can use and you can leverage even if you run core servers or Hyper-V. Let's briefly have a look at management capabilities of clusters. So Max just demonstrated that. I'm also going to show that for you on slides first, and then I'll run a really very brief demo because product is very, very straightforward. It's very easy to understand and use, and it just is dedicated to save you time and make your Hyper-V experience a much better one. So what you do whenever you have a cluster set up, you just add that cluster into File Manager console, and you can see that within the tree, the nodes of your cluster appear automatically. And once you check the storage, you can actually perform all the cluster operations that are so great. You can enjoy live migration. You can perform maintenance by pausing your cluster nodes and resume the cluster nodes after you're done within File Manager interface. So there is no need to go and live or to failover cluster manager. So all operations are performed within File Manager by itself. Also, TreeView allows you to get all the virtual machine statuses in a really fast manner, so we just need a split of a second to understand which virtual machines are running, which ones are high available, and which ones are off. So in case there are any warnings, that's also represented there. As you work with clusters, obviously you really need to make and have an efficient way of creating new virtual machines in there. And what Max just showed you, we have a really convenient way of implementing virtual machine settings templates. And this is something that you can leverage whenever you create new virtual machines. There's different operating systems, different setup, but that use similar configuration. But obviously in the real world, right, so you want to have a real template that you can leverage to speed up virtual machine creation and make that just a matter of few minutes. So that's why we've implemented the cloning capability, so cloning feature within File Manager, and it is as easy as that is on your screen right now. So this is just cloning. Window here, you can create as many clones as you need, and as far as you have a golden image, so template virtual machine, you can really be up and running with 100 virtual machines on the same operating systems just in a few hours instead of spending weeks on that. So obviously, most of you met golden image approach before, so let's just briefly cover what it actually means in Windows environments, right? So whenever you create a golden image, so you just create a new virtual machine with required parameters. You install and configure your operating system right there, and you install and configure the required software, because obviously operating system, that's not it, right? So you want to use your virtual machines for your business, so you really want to have applications that you use in your environment installed there. Once you're done, you just run sysprep, and this is actually built in within operating system for quite a while right now. And this small utility built into Windows allows you to prepare a virtual machine an operating system to be cloned later on and used as a template. So that's really small, but it really does create a job. So once you've done that, you just keep that virtual machine in off state, and you can use it as a template for future. So really that makes the process very, very efficient. And whenever you use clusters, obviously you want to make everything fast, and you want to create new applications and new virtual machines much, much faster. So this is what we allow you to do with cloning operation. As this operation sometimes may take a while, as well as other operations, management operations on the cluster, we've implemented a really great approach of running these tasks in the background. So all the tasks that are happening within Finance Manager for Hyper-V can be sent into background, and this really saves you tremendous amount of time, because instead of sitting and waiting till the operation finishes, you can easily send it to a background like clone operation, expert operation, and instead of sitting and waiting, you can keep working and setting up your infrastructure. So this is where it is. This is what it looks like. Really very straightforward once again, so you don't have to sit and wait. Just use your time efficiently. So this is what we offer and what we do with Task Manager built into Finance Manager. When you have all these operations covered, you probably think that's it. But something that really is important within the Hyper-V infrastructures is the way to monitor what you're doing and what is actually happening with your virtual machines. And this is what we just implemented in the Finance Manager in the most recent version. So right now the version 5.1 is out, and this includes a notification mechanism. So this is actually something that allows you to be notified if a new virtual machine gets created, if it gets removed, gets started or restarted. So these operations are actually happening usually when you know about them, right? So as you're a Hyper-V administrator, you need to be aware about those. And in case someone connects to your server and does it without you knowing, you really want to be notified, and probably really fast. So that's what we did with the email notifications built in Finance Manager. And you see they can also send you really important notices. So if someone imports or exports virtual machine, that's essential for you to know. And unless that's you, really that's probably someone trying to squeeze another unnecessary virtual machine in, or trying to export your valuable data. In case replication fails, this means your protection status, right, is going to not as good level, right? So it actually becomes worse. The reason for that is replication uses different channels. Sometimes they may fail, and usually they recover. But still, in case VM replication fails, you really need to be aware of all that. And that's what we built into Finance Manager for Hyper-V. And virtual machine configuration changes, of course, these are also very important. So all of these parameters can really greatly help you to save your environment in a very safe state and be sure that is running clean and shiny. So give me a few seconds to switch to the server, and I'll show you what Finance Manager looks like live. All right, just a few seconds for that. Coming on the server.
In the meantime, while Alex is setting that, oops, sorry, I was going to say, in the meantime, while Alex is setting that up, don't forget, we have a Q&A starting soon. If you have a question, to enter it in the Ask a Question box. And Alex, I'll get it back to you. Sorry about that.
Thank you. Thanks. So this is what it looks like. And you just saw some interfaces, and you see actually it is as straightforward as it can be. So it's supposed to bring you a really great experience with Hyper-V management. And here what Max demonstrated to you. So right when you have a cluster, so failover cluster manager just shows you cluster disks, right? So it's really important for you to understand the capacity of that. And if it's running low, you'll actually be notified by a Finance Manager, and you really need to be aware about that, because within Hyper-V, you know that if you don't have enough storage, virtual machines will go into pause state. So that's really important. So you need to check it from time to time. And once again, Finance Manager will send you a notification right here in case some of your storages running low. As of the nodes, so you can see them right here. Here are the nodes, and you can see that cluster virtual machines, actually the high available virtual machines, are marked with their own icon, and they have magenta color that really makes that really easy to understand. The virtual machines that are residing on the local storage, they're actually blue, so you can easily identify if virtual machine is high available or not. So that's available right here. And you see, if you don't need a virtual machine to be high available anymore, you can remove it from cluster. Once again, that's available within Find and Manageable Hyper-V right here. Very, very cool search capability if you need to find your virtual machine fast, and you have a big number of those running your infrastructure. So here it is. This is an option that is really very convenient for you to use. But what I promised you to show, so here's the clone export functionality that I was talking about before. So here it is. Just select the virtual machine that you're about to clone and export, create clones, specify the number of virtual machines that you want to be created, specify the destination for clones. That's it. So it's as easy as it is. Once you hit finish, there will be a to background button right here, so you can send all the tasks into background, and here it is. So if you go to tasks, here are the tasks right here, and they're available for you. You can always stick it to the bottom of the window, so if you're a former VMware user, you'll see that it really looks very, very similar. And that's a great job of showing you the operations in here. And as of the notification mechanism, it is actually right here. So if you go to View Options, here is the notification option, and here are the criteria. So you just choose the ones you want to leverage, and that as easy as it is. So really very, very simple. File Manager obviously brings you many more than that. So it brings you system status reporting, best practices analyzer built into the product, Hyper-V logs built in as well. It can be also expanded with an agentless antivirus that actually works very efficient on Hyper-V infrastructures. But as our focus is cluster infrastructures today, so that is as easy as I just showed you. So that's it from my side, and I think we are ready for questions and answers. So if you have questions to me or Max, we'll be more than happy to answer them.
Yeah, thank you so much, Alex and Max. Thanks, guys, for your presentations. Much appreciated. So as Alex mentioned, if you have a question for the guys, please feel free to enter it in the Ask a Question box appearing on the left-hand side of your console. We'll try to get to as many questions as we can before we close out the webcast today. But we have a question here for Max. This question is StarWind's current version completely supported to be installed in Core Hyper-V? The old portion was not supported without GUI.
Okay, so the new version is fully supported to be installed in the Core Hyper-V. The old version was actually also supported. The only limitation was you could not install the console to manage it on the server core. You had to install the console separately. But both old and new versions of StarWind are fully supported to be installed on the core versions.
We got another question here. This comes from Joe. He's asking, is it common for the disk, when brought online through the disk part, to be read-only?
Well, technically it's not read-only. In GUI it says uninitialized, so you bring it online, then you initialize it, and then you create the partition. So it's basically a conflict of different terms in Microsoft, so it appears as read-only, but actually in the GUI it would just say non-initialized.
Somebody was curious, how does dedupe work on StarWind, and what exactly gets deduped?
There is a lot of stuff which gets deduplicated. If we're talking about data which deduplicates best, obviously those are the virtual machines, especially VDI environments. With VDI environments, the compression ratios can grow up to 1 to 100. on StarWind side, we deduplicate our level 1 cache, we deduplicate the data we store on spindles, and we deduplicate the data we store on the flash. Everything is performed in line, so in memory. And you may wonder what is the price for that. The price is 4.5 gigabytes of RAM per terabyte of stored data. I think I'll get into more details, but not on this webinar, so should you have any more questions, you can always email support@starwindsoftware.com and say that you have some questions remain after the webinar.
Excellent. Thanks, Max. I got a question here. Is it possible for StarWind to scale out sorry, let me read this again. Is it possible to see StarWind with a scale-out file server over SMB?
Yeah, that is possible. So the same thing you saw with a Hyper-V cluster, same thing can be configured with an scale-out file server and then have StarWind storage presented as SMB to the Hyper-V environment. The only limitation is SMB3 cannot be connected in loopback, so that brings us to a not really hyper-converged, but just basic environment where there are two StarWind servers and then there is a dedicated compute layer running just Hyper-V. But on the other hand, you can use all the fancy features of SMB, have real file level storage for your Hyper-V machines, and even use the SMB Direct to speed up your Hyper-V environment.
I got a question here. We'll direct this one towards Alex. Somebody was curious. If we have 5.9, do we not need to use System Center?
That's a great question, actually. So what we aim in 5.9, so we really want to deliver the management functionality that companies use in everyday life, Hyper-V management. And we actually cover most of the functionality of System Center Virtual Machine Manager. So obviously, we cover everything. Just there are a few functionalities that still remain only System Center Virtual Machine Manager. So one of them is dynamic optimization. So it's not yet a part of Finance Manager, but actually we are working on that already. So it's going to be a part of the product pretty soon. Also, multi-tenancy support. You know that the System Center Virtual Machine Manager allows you to create tenants, clouds in there. So we are currently working on that as well. So this is actually almost it when you need to use System Center Virtual Machine Manager. All of the remaining parts are covered by Finance Manager for Hyper-V. It actually also includes the monitoring piece that I wasn't showing you today. It's called Finance Cloud Monitor. It's actually going along with Finance Manager for completely for free. And it allows you to monitor the performance of your Hyper infrastructure, of your virtual machines and clusters. So in short, if you don't use dynamic optimization and you don't use multi-tenancy, you can go and use Finance 100%.
And one last question. We'll end it. This question here is from Max, and this question is why would you use SolarWind and not just Server 2012 R2?
Okay, so, well, SolarWind, or I would say StarWind. SolarWind does monitoring tools, so you can actually use both at the same time. StarWind allows you to create an environment with a much smaller hardware footprint compared to one Windows offers out of the box. Moreover, StarWind is an active-active solution, and it offers a lot of additional features like SSD caching, distributed write caching, which is not even present in the Hyper-V itself. It has read caching, but no write caching. And StarWind also does all the snapshots on the storage level. It has an ODX, which offloads everything from the compute layer directly to the storage layer. And StarWind can scale beyond 64 nodes, which is not the case with the Microsoft iSCSI target here. So there are some ways there where StarWind and Microsoft iSCSI can coexist, but most times I've seen people just removing Microsoft iSCSI or other third-party iSCSI and just doing hyper-converged and StarWind.
And you know what, we got one last question that just came in before we close out today. This question will ask, this will be for Alex. Alex, this comes from Dimitri. He's asking, does Five9 manage virtual machines on cluster, and does it support Gen 2 VMs?
Absolutely. Yes, it supports clusters, as I just demonstrated, and it supports Generation 2 virtual machines. So we fully support HyperV 2008 R2 SP1, 2012, and 2012 R2, and actually it can also coexist together within Five9 Manager interface. So Five9 allows you to actually manage multiple versions of HyperV within the same console as well.
All right, excellent. Well, thank you guys so much for participating in today's webcast. We really appreciate you taking time out of your busy day. We really appreciate that. If you had a question and didn't get answered, or you're asking your questions now, I'll make sure to pass the questions along to the fellas once the webcast is over, so that way they can reply to you. But thank you all in the audience for taking an hour out of your day to join us for today's webcast, building a high available Hyper-V cluster using free Microsoft Hyper-V server. Today's webcast was sponsored by StarWind Software, brought to you by Redmond Magazine. Thank you all for joining, and we hope you have a great day. Take care, everybody.
Thank you. Goodbye.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
That was 170. All right, cool.
Okay.